If you do these 5 things for any woman, you're being a fool. Why would you even do it? Is it just to avoid looking weak for a one-night stand? Or do you actually think this is what love requires? Here's the problem. Most men have been programmed with terrible advice about relationships. They've been told that sacrifice equals love, that putting her first proves devotion, that being endlessly accommodating is what a good man does. And then they're shocked, genuinely confused, when she loses attraction, when she starts pulling away, when the very behaviors they thought would make her love them more end up pushing her out the door. The truth is uncomfortable but necessary. Attraction doesn't work the way you've been taught. The things you think will make her want you more often have the opposite effect. And if you keep doing them, you're going to keep getting the same disappointing results. Today we're covering the 5 things you should never do for any woman. Not because you don't care about her, but because doing them destroys the very thing you're trying to build. The first thing you should never do: abandon your purpose, your goals, or your mission for a woman. This sounds romantic in theory. The idea that you love her so much you'd put everything else aside, that she's your whole world, that nothing matters more than making her happy. In practice, this is relationship poison. Here's what actually happens when a man abandons his purpose for a woman. She loses attraction, not immediately. It's gradual, but it's inevitable. Why? Because what attracted her to you in the first place was probably your drive, your ambition, your focus on building something. The sense that you had direction, that you were going somewhere, that you were a man with a vision for his life. When you drop all of that to orbit around her, you become a different person. You become a man without direction. A man whose whole identity is wrapped up in keeping her happy. A man who has nothing going on except her. That's not attractive. That's pressure. She didn't sign up to be your entire reason for existing. She wanted a partner with his own life, his own goals, his own sense of purpose. When you abandon those things, you're not showing her love. You're showing her that you have nothing else. And here's the psychological dynamic most men miss. When you make her your whole world, she has to carry that weight. Your happiness depends entirely on her. Your emotional state rises and falls based on how she's treating you. That's exhausting for her. It creates a dynamic where she feels responsible for your well-being, which isn't love, it's burden. The men who maintain attraction long-term are the ones who never stop pursuing their purpose. They love their woman, but they don't lose themselves in her. They have goals outside the relationship. They have passions, projects, ambitions that continue regardless of their relationship status. This isn't about being distant or unavailable. It's about maintaining the identity that made you attractive in the first place. Your purpose was there before she came along. It should still be there while she's with you. And honestly, it should still be there if she leaves. A man with purpose is magnetic. A man whose only purpose is his woman is desperate. Know the difference. I've seen this play out countless times. A guy starts dating someone new. He's excited, she's into him. Everything seems perfect. So, he starts skipping the gym, stops working on his side project, sees his friends less, spends every free moment with her or thinking about her. 6 months later, she's gone, and he can't figure out what happened. What happened is that he stopped being the man she was attracted to. He traded his identity for a relationship, and when the identity was gone, so was the attraction. Your purpose isn't negotiable. It's not something you set aside for the right person. The right person is someone who understands that your purpose matters and supports it, not someone who requires you to abandon it. The second thing you should never do: take responsibility for problems that aren't yours. Men are natural problem solvers. When we see something broken, we want to fix it. When someone we care about is struggling, our instinct is to step in and handle it. This is a good trait in many contexts. In relationships, it can destroy you. Here's what happens when a man constantly solves a woman's problems for her. He stops being her partner and becomes her servant. He stops being her equal and becomes her resource. The relationship shifts from mutual to transactional, and he becomes the one doing all the giving. Think about it. She has drama with her friends. You step in to fix it. She has issues at work. You try to solve them. She has financial problems. You start covering her expenses. She has emotional issues. You become her therapist. Each time you do this, you're communicating something, not what you think you're communicating. Which is love and care. What you're actually communicating is that you don't believe she can handle her own life, that you see yourself as the competent one who needs to manage her problems, that your role in this relationship is to be useful. That's not a partner, that's a caretaker. And here's the thing about caretakers. They're appreciated, but not desired. She might be grateful for your help, but gratitude isn't attraction. You can be the most useful man in her life and still be the one she's not excited to see. The healthy alternative isn't to be cold or unhelpful. It's to support without rescuing. There's a difference. Support sounds like, that situation sounds difficult. What do you think you should do? It's being present, listening, offering perspective when asked, but ultimately letting her handle her own challenges. Rescuing sounds like, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. It's stepping in to remove the problem so she doesn't have to face it. Support builds respect. Rescuing builds dependency. And dependency doesn't create attraction. It creates resentment, entitlement, and eventually contempt. The man she respects is the one who believes in her capability. The one who treats her like a competent adult. The one who's there for her without taking over for her. Stop trying to fix everything. Some problems are hers to solve. Let her solve them. Here's a practical example. She's stressed about a conflict at work. Your instinct is to give advice. Maybe even offer to talk to someone on her behalf. Maybe help her craft the perfect email response. What you should do instead, listen, ask her what she thinks she should do. Let her vent if she needs to. And then let her handle it. She's an adult. She managed her life before you showed up. She's capable of solving her own problems. When you treat her like she needs you to rescue her, you're actually insulting her competence, even if you're doing it out of love. The man she respects and desires is the one who sees her as an equal, capable, intelligent, and able to handle her own challenges. Be that man. The third thing you should never do, chase her approval or compete for her attention. This one is subtle because it often looks like enthusiasm, like interest, like effort. But there's a line between showing interest and chasing approval, and most men cross it without realizing. Chasing approval looks like constantly checking if she's happy with you, adjusting your opinions to match hers, seeking validation through her responses, needing her to confirm that you're doing okay. Competing for attention looks like trying to outshine other guys in her orbit, getting jealous and showing it, working harder to impress her when you feel threatened, treating the relationship like a competition you need to win. Both of these behaviors communicate the same thing: insecurity. And insecurity is one of the biggest attraction killers that exists. Here's the psychology. When you chase approval, you're signaling that your sense of self depends on her opinion. You need her to validate you. Your emotional state is controlled by how she treats you. That's not attractive because it puts her in the position of managing your self-esteem. That's not her job. When you compete for attention, you're signaling that you don't believe you're enough on your own. You need to outperform other men to deserve her. You're not secure in what you bring to the table. That's not attractive because it shows you don't value yourself. So why should she? The man who maintains attraction is emotionally self-sufficient. His sense of worth doesn't depend on her validation. He's interested in her, but he doesn't need her approval to feel okay about himself. He's not competing because he's not worried about the competition. He knows what he brings. He knows his value. If she doesn't see it, that's information, not a crisis. This doesn't mean being arrogant or dismissive. It means being grounded, secure, present without being desperate, interested without being needy. The paradox is that when you stop chasing her approval, she becomes more interested in giving it. When you stop competing for her attention, you naturally become more attractive. Scarcity creates value. Self-assurance creates attraction. Let her see you as the prize, not because you tell her you're the prize. That's just words. Because you actually believe it, and your behavior reflects that belief. Think about the men you've seen who are naturally attractive to women. They're not constantly performing. They're not trying to impress. They're not monitoring reactions to see if they're doing okay. They're just themselves, comfortable, grounded. That comfort comes from internal validation. They know who they are. They know what they're worth. They don't need a woman's reaction to confirm it. When you chase approval, you're outsourcing your self-worth. You're saying, "Tell me I'm okay." That's a child looking to a parent for validation. It's not a man standing in his own value. Build yourself to the point where you don't need approval. Get your life in order. Achieve things you're proud of. Develop skills and qualities that you respect in yourself. When your sense of worth comes from within, you stop chasing external validation, and that's when you become truly attractive. The fourth thing you should never do, overinvest before she's earned it. This is where so many men go wrong. They meet someone they like, they feel chemistry, and immediately they go Allen. Grand gestures, expensive dates, constant availability, declarations of feeling, future planning after 3 dates. It feels romantic. It feels like you're showing her how serious you are, how much you care, how different you are from the other guys who played games with her. What it actually does is kill attraction. Here's why. Attraction requires mystery. It requires uncertainty. It requires her to wonder a little bit about where she stands, how you feel, whether she's got you locked down. When you overinvest early, you remove all of that. She knows exactly where she stands. She knows you're completely into her. She knows she's got you. And while that might seem like it should make her feel secure and happy, it actually removes the tension that creates attraction. Think about it from her perspective. If you're going this hard after barely knowing her, what does that say? It says you're desperate. It says your standards are low. It says you probably do this for anyone who gave you a chance. None of those conclusions are attractive. There's also a value dynamic at play. Things that are freely given aren't valued the way things that are earned are. When you give too much too fast, she didn't have to work for your investment. It was just handed to her. And psychologically, we don't value what we didn't earn. The healthier approach is matching energy. She invests, you reciprocate. She shows interest, you show interest. She earns more access to your time, attention, and resources as she demonstrates that she's worth the investment. This isn't about playing games or manipulating her. It's about having standards. It's about recognizing that your time, energy, and affection have value, and they should be given to people who demonstrate they deserve them, not thrown at anyone who happens to show up. Early in a relationship, you don't know if she's worth the investment. You're still learning who she is. Acting like she's already earned everything is dishonest. It's pretending to know something you can't possibly know yet. Hold back. Not because you're playing games, but because investment should be proportional to demonstrated value. She earns more from you as she shows she's worth more. That's not manipulation, that's discernment. Here's a practical framework. Match her energy. If she's texting you 3 times a day, you text her about 3 times a day. If she's making time to see you once a week, you make time about once a week. If she's being thoughtful with small gestures, you reciprocate with similar gestures. What you don't do is massively outgive her. You don't text 10 times to her 3. You don't plan elaborate dates while she barely shows up. You don't declare deep feelings when she's still figuring out if she likes you. The goal is reciprocity. 2 people both investing, both earning, both building something together. Not one person pouring everything in while the other decides if they're interested. When you overinvest, you're not being generous. You're being desperate, and she can feel the difference. The 5th thing you should never do: tolerate disrespect. This is the big one. This is where so many relationships go to die, and men don't even realize they're digging the grave. It starts small. A cutting comment you let slide. A dismissive tone you ignore. A boundary crossed that you don't address. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. You don't want to be controlling. You don't want to start a fight over something minor. But here's what you're actually doing. You're training her on how to treat you. Every time you tolerate disrespect, you communicate that disrespect is acceptable. You set the floor for how she can treat you and still keep you around. And over time, that floor becomes the norm. It escalates. The comments get sharper. The dismissiveness becomes contempt. The boundary violations become routine. And by the time you finally react, you've been tolerating it for so long that your reaction seems like an overreaction to her. Where did this come from? You never had a problem before. The psychological reality is that women test men. This isn't manipulation, it's instinct. On some level, she's assessing whether you can hold your ground, whether you have boundaries, whether you respect yourself enough to demand respect from others. When you tolerate disrespect, you fail that test. Not because she was consciously testing you, but because her attraction is wired to respond to men who have self-respect. When you show that you don't, attraction diminishes regardless of how nice you are, how generous, how loving. The man who maintains attraction is the one who holds his boundaries calmly and consistently. He doesn't rage, he doesn't threaten, he doesn't make it dramatic. He simply makes it clear that certain treatment is unacceptable and follows through with consequences if it continues. "I don't accept being spoken to that way," said calmly, then followed by action if it happens again. This isn't about being harsh or cold. It's about having standards that you actually enforce. It's about communicating through your actions that you value yourself enough to require respect. Women respect men who hold their standards. They lose attraction to men who don't. It's that simple. Every time you let disrespect slide, you're trading short-term peace for long-term loss of attraction. Stop tolerating it, not for her, for yourself. Because a man who tolerates disrespect isn't being loving. He's being weak. And weakness isn't attractive to anyone, including him. Here's what boundary enforcement actually looks like. She makes a cutting comment about you in front of friends. You don't explode. You don't make a scene. Later, privately, you say, "What you said earlier wasn't okay. I don't accept being put down in front of people." She can respond however she wants. She might apologize. She might get defensive. She might claim you're overreacting. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you stated your boundary clearly. If it happens again, there are consequences. Maybe you leave the gathering early. Maybe you create distance for a few days. Maybe if it's a pattern, you end the relationship. The specific consequence matters less than the consistency. She needs to know that crossing your boundaries costs something. Men who do this aren't controlling. They're self-respecting. There's a massive difference between telling someone what they can and can't do versus telling someone how you will and won't be treated. The first is controlling behavior. The second is having standards. The man who sets and enforces boundaries communicates that his well-being matters, that he's not so desperate for companionship that he'll accept poor treatment, that he values himself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't treat him right. That man is attractive. That man is respected. That man is the one she's afraid to lose. Notice the pattern running through all 5 of these behaviors. Abandoning your purpose, solving her problems, chasing approval, overinvesting, tolerating disrespect. They all have something in common. They prioritize her over you in ways that destroy attraction. The conventional wisdom says that's what love is, sacrifice, putting her first, making her the center of your world. But attraction doesn't follow conventional wisdom. Attraction follows a different set of rules. Rules based on value, reciprocity, and respect. When you put her above your purpose, you lower your value. When you solve all her problems, you remove reciprocity. When you chase approval, you signal low value. When you overinvest, you eliminate the tension that creates desire. When you tolerate disrespect, you lose her respect. The alternative isn't to be selfish or cold. The alternative is to be complete. To be a man who has his own life, his own standards, his own sense of worth that doesn't depend on her validation. That man can love deeply without losing himself. He can be generous without being exploited. He can be attentive without being needy. He can be committed without being desperate. He brings something to the relationship instead of looking for the relationship to complete him. This is the fundamental shift from scarcity to abundance, from neediness to groundedness, from looking for someone to fill a void to being complete and choosing to share that completeness. The needy man is always asking, how do I get her to like me? How do I keep her? How do I make sure she doesn't leave? The grounded man asks, is she adding to my life? Does she meet my standards? Is this relationship serving both of us? Same situation, completely different frame, and women can feel the difference. They can feel when a man needs them versus when a man wants them, and want is always more attractive than need. Here's what you need to ask yourself. Why do you do these things in the first place? If you're honest, the answer is usually fear. Fear that she'll leave if you don't give enough. Fear that you're not enough on your own. Fear that maintaining boundaries will push her away. Fear that having your own life will make you less attractive somehow. But the irony is that acting on those fears creates exactly what you're afraid of. The overgiving, the boundaryless accommodation, the abandonment of self. These behaviors feel like they should secure the relationship, but they actually undermine it. You cannot negotiate attraction.